you see reality through the eye of God. And I'm not a religious person. I'm actually way closer to an atheist than most religious people. So when I make a claim like this, I'm not talking about some weird esoteric claim. And I also don't think that you need to be spiritual or anti-intellectual to recognize that what I'm saying here is true. This is not about a belief system or dogma. This is about awakening to what consciousness really is and what reality is. It's about nature. And recognizing this actually has a lot of benefits for your own psychology and your understanding of the world. It helps you to relate with yourself better and to engage with reality in a more alive way. So this video is going to be about the nature of reality, God, and how understanding the oneness of it all will make you a more content and productive human being. So when we say the word reality, what we actually mean is a unifying force. Reality is one thing, because everything that is outside of reality isn't real and therefore doesn't exist. And even if you were to imagine some division within reality, something outside of one reality, well, if you take it on the ultimate level, if you make it about the thing that is real, well, then everything that becomes outside of reality actually gets incorporated within. This is also why nothing doesn't really exist. At least it would still exist in part with what is everything. So on the most foundational layer, it's important to understand that reality needs to be one, just by pure definition, or by what we mean when we say what reality is. It needs to be all-inclusive, because what isn't included just doesn't exist. But let's make sure that we're on the same page. So when I say reality, I'm actually talking about everything. So we might say, for example, casually, that dreams aren't real, but your dreams are still part of reality. That's why we can talk about them, right? Like dreams are real in a meaningful way, or if they weren't, we couldn't refer to them. There would just be nothing to talk about. The same way that your thoughts, we might say that your thoughts aren't necessarily real, right? You can say that your thoughts can be delusional, but here too, thoughts exist within reality. It doesn't make sense to say that thoughts don't exist, because they do. The same with hallucinations and paranoia. Even if you're hallucinating or are paranoid about something that is completely delusional, even your perception of delusion is part of reality. And if you see somebody who is completely out of his mind because he took some drug, and you can see how delusional they are and they just talk to people that aren't really there, the fact that his behavior is being changed by his perception means that whatever is changing his perception is still part of reality, because if not, they would just behave like a normal human. So we might place them into like a different category of truth, something less productive and less functioning, or something that you can't effectively share with other people, the same way you can't really share a dream with other people. But if you have hallucinations, well, the situation that you're hallucinating in the perception is still real, right? This is why it's a hallucination. It's the nature of the thing. So whatever we can come up with as some division within reality, the moment we have a word for it, it means that it is still part of a larger whole. So the division kind of, like, it does exist, but it also doesn't. The same is true for the perceptions of different people. You have an entire view of life that is completely your own, right? Like, you have your perception of reality and I have mine. And even our different opinions or beliefs, they might be, quite different, yours from mine. But even in this difference of opinion that we might have, we still are sharing the same space, the same reality, the space in which things exist. Therefore, there must be a unifying force that makes all things one. This force is what I'm calling the eye of God. And a lot of people, especially the atheist rationalist type, have a lot of negative feelings towards the word God because it carries a lot of baggage. But I don't want to avoid it here because I do really mean it. It's just a lot less personal and empty than what religious have claimed. So usually secular thought just dismisses it as religious superstition. But I do think that there's something huge that is being dismissed there. Because for all intents and purposes, when I say God, I mean a universal force of existence. A force that is aware of its existence. It knows everything that can be known. We might refer to it as consciousness, or awareness, or presence. God is the same as reality. And this is what religions have always claimed, right? That there's one unifying force that makes it all into a whole. But when I say all of this stuff, well, I'm actually talking about your perception of reality. God is the eye that is seeing through you, in that whatever reality is, your perception is a part of it. And for everything that you're concerned, it might as well be everything to you. So your perception of existence is part of the greater whole. Mystical traditions have always spoken of a primordial awareness, a formless awareness like space, boundless in all directions, timeless, infinite, and the connector of everything. These mystical traditions speak about this primordial awareness, or like this primordial state, as unconditioned, meaning it is free from all cause and effect, which is also the classical idea of what God is supposed to be. You can imagine it as the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the end of everything at the same time, or like the start at the Big Bang and the heat death of the universe. It's the change and the impermanence of time. But when I speak about it in these terms, it sounds very magical. It sounds very woo-y, right? It sounds very baseless, like something you could never really verify. And whenever you believe it, well, it needs to be a sort of superstition. You think that you might have to see it to believe it. Or you might have to take too much drugs for it to become true. But no, that's not true at all. The qualities that I just described are immediately evident. Something that is both beginning and end, a timeless presence that connects everything, something fundamental and unconditioned, something that simply exists and is aware of existence, is you. It's the nature of consciousness. It's the nature of your present moment experience. And why it is talked about often as some all-powerful being is because whatever is possible happens within reality. Reality is that which exists because it's possible. It's nature. So reality is real because it appears behind your eyes. You are timeless because you have always existed in this feeling of now, in this feeling of present moment experience. And we might conceptualize time as something that exists in the past and in the future, but factually, nobody has ever witnessed a future, and nobody has ever been in a past. In actual experience, in actual reality, there's only now. And this now is pretty much timeless. So the present moment is always the only thing you truly know to exist. The idea of time appeals to the changing nature of reality. But whatever you are has never changed. Despite you having all of these atoms in your body that constantly keep shifting, and you have different belief systems and ideas about the world that always keep changing, you're the same light you were born as. This is why the identity identifies with this body. You know intuitively that the you that was a baby and the you that you are now are the same person. And it's because this presence has never left you. It is always there. You didn't choose to exist. You simply do. Even if you point to evolution or your parents as the cause of your existence, these are just stories that distract you from the simple fact that you exist for no clear reason at all. And here comes the idea of unconditionality to it. We like to speak about conditions in like material terms, in like terms of evolution or your parents and DNA, but this moment of experience, this like nowness, comes pretty much from the direct experience with no condition at all, because nobody has chosen any of this. It's just there. So the implication here is quite profound. When you see reality, you're seeing things as it is. So your perception of reality, your awareness, is surprisingly close to what we could call objectivity, because you see things as they are to you. So your own body becomes a vessel to whatever we call reality. And as a unique vessel, or like as an individual vessel, we like to talk about it as subjective. But then when we have a ton of vessels together and they all share common ideas and language, and we can refer to things in like a consistent way, then we call about it as objective. But then we argue about the not just the edges, but the entire construct that we then create, and we get confused about what is true, what is not true, what is a belief, what is not a belief. But we can just dismiss all of this and notice, awareness definitely is real and it is universal. The crazy nature of reality is that there are infinite ways to experience it, like an infinite intelligence imagining infinite experiences. And if you follow me logically here, this isn't esoteric at all. Think about how many human experiences there are, how many animal experiences there are. What else could possibly experience something? Like the possibilities seem quite endless, even if you only reduce it to human experience. And there's an intelligent emerging in nature in all ways, which connects again to the idea that God is intelligent. As kids, this awe for existence, this awe for intelligence is striking to us. And then as we age, we start to think it's normal. Yet everything ordinary is, in its truth, utterly extraordinary. So the fact is, or the reality that we start to come to, is that if everything exists in this like weird boundless space, and there's no real limitation set on it, and it's unconditioned, and then always present, well, here we have the idea of God, but it manifests through whatever we perceive as consciousness. Then there's also the idea, or like a very important idea in many religions, that God is said to be unconditionally loving. And unconditional love, what it means is that it has no bias. It doesn't need any conditioning for it to be there. So what we see, or the way it manifests for us, is that all perceptions are allowed. And this leads to the idea of suffering and evil. Suffering becomes like a requirement for God. Because if it's truly boundless and there's no real force that limits its potential, well, with infinite potential for creation, then why would it stop at pain? Why would it stop at torture? Why would it stop at genocide? And it sounds evil to say that God loves genocide and God loves torture. There's something that recoils from this. And you might say that love is not as good of a definition as acceptance. So it accepts it as a necessary evil for freedom. But then also, you can argue that whatever God is the same that the devil is. Like, they are also one and the same, as it all is one perception that just sees what's possible. That's why in mythology, the devil fell from heaven. He came from the kingdom of God, and then he got separated from it. He became separate, and then he became the devil. This is the mythological narrative. I'm not talking about it literally. I just think it maps on to the way we experience existence as separate beings. And these narratives were meant to help us understand ourselves. Not to project something above us or below us, but our own nature. What we call evil is what threatens our own boundaries. What we call objective reality is what maintains those boundaries. And when we see the oneness and we see God consciousness as like the unifying force, then the nature of evil is really the nature of forgetfulness. So if you harm another and you hurt another person, what you're not noticing is that you're doing it to yourself, quite literally. Not just as some abstract philosophical idea, but no, literally you're hurting your own body when you hurt another body, just from the perception of ego, from the perception of, you might say, evil, of forgetfulness. It doesn't matter because it's somebody else. So when we see this subjective nature exists within this feeling of boundlessness, and then we notice, like most of the time when we notice this, it's because of the pain and it's because of the suffering, because this is what stops our boundaries. So doing awakening, what happens to people, or also, it can happen through psychedelic experiences, meditation, or just philosophical inquiry. We often come in touch with a deep sense of pain. And then this pain is what opens up those boundaries, because it makes us remember that within this pain, identity stops mattering. It's not really about your pain or my pain. It's just painful. That's why our moral intuitions tell us to not hurt anybody. So with all of this, what tends to happen, like you likely have had some intuitions about this, and then doing these realizations or insights, many people get attached to this idea of subjectivity. And then the idea becomes that everything is subjective and there's no objectivity at all. Because when everything is subjective, you can then start to accept the boundless nature of it all. And then even concepts like evil become relative, and you can say that evil doesn't really exist. But it's also important to return to the objectivity about it, right? To remember that in practice, in reality, torture and genocide are bad because you're just hurting yourself. We are hurting ourselves. And you've likely sensed by now that if all of this is one, well, what I'm trying to point to is that you are quite literally everyone. You are all perceptions of reality, making you immortal. And this sounds crazy to say, and it's very crazy for many. It scares the mind, it scares the ego, because we desperately just want to be our permanent sense of self. But the gift of our human nature is that we have this intellectual capacity to realize, if I hurt another, I'm just hurting myself. And there is this unifying light of awareness that makes it all into being me, into being one, into being God consciousness. Because the difference, if I hurt one light of awareness or another light of awareness, becomes quite arbitrary when you identify with the entire light as a whole. So when you look into my eyes, what do you see? Can you imagine being me? Do you recognize in my eyes that I'm not really different from you? Because what is really the difference between you and me? If we drop all of the human stories, we both know we are human. The conditions that shaped me in my unique ways shaped you in different particular ways. And maybe we have our differences in this way, right? But neither of us are really better or worse. Neither is more deserving of love and well-being. We recognize each other as humans because we share the same light of awareness. It has always been the unifying force between everything that we do. And that's why I think this is all not really that esoteric. It's quite logical. Understanding this isn't just spiritual masturbation. And it's also not about your ego inflating itself and calling yourself, I am God. But it's about a healing force. Understanding this nature is coming in contact with the ultimate truth. And this can both hurt and heal. Because when you see clearly, you realize that all your suffering, all your problems, while important, are temporary. And they are by design. And the light of awareness will always find something new to explore and something new to be. Not as some other life after this one that you're having, but as the next moment after this one. It is already death. It is already changed. And soon you'll forget this video ever happened and you'll enjoy something else. I'll just keep playing in your subconscious. If you let go of the need to be a permanent someone and you just immerse yourself in the experience surrounding you, if you understand that it is about the joy of these experiences and you don't cling to the feeling of a particular form of love or a particular form of warmth, well, then you won't feel this disconnection from your true nature, and you will feel a flow that makes life just very much enjoyable. Because then everything just becomes you. You let go and fall free. You stop holding on too tightly and accept all of the darkness of the world. The same well-being can be found in everything. The unifying beauty of reality is that even the simplest pleasures of drinking a cup of tea can feel deeply sacred, deeply divine, and, for all intents and purposes, godly. That's also why beauty speaks to us. The beauty that we sense in nature, in the human body, or in art. When we remove our personal narratives, we reconnect with this divine awareness that creates this beauty. And I do strongly believe that we can create this framework also within secular thought. There's no necessity to make this huge differentiation between science and spirituality. I do think that they all are quite literally the same. They are just explaining it in different ways. Because to know what it's like to be a cup, or a shower, or a tree, is to simply perceive it. And it doesn't matter what the boundaries are, because there are no real boundaries that we can witness, because time makes us move forward in this entropic way anyway. Like everything moves towards entropy. The only thing that remains the same is the sense of presence, is this awareness. And it cannot ever be destroyed. That's why reality is so real. So it all has meaning. It all wants to be seen through you. So the subjectivity of your body and mind and this objectivity of primordial awareness are one and the same. The whole point of spiritual practice, or even philosophical inquiry or meditation, is to see the silent light shining in you and to realize you are quite literally the light of God, separated in human form to perceive reality through your particular eyes.